Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Being 5:15 p.m., I'll call to order the Joint Review Board meeting for Tuesday, August 27th, 2024. Roll call is taken. There is one member absent at this point. Item number 2 on the agenda is consideration and appointment and/or reaffirmation of the Joint Review Board's public member. I would make a motion to appoint Sarah Malkow as the public member.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Heckendorf, second by Rettler. Any further discussion? All in favor by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3, election and/or reaffirmation of a chairperson. Anybody want to be the chair?
I would make a motion to appoint Village President Heckendorf as the chair.
I'll second that.
We have Dahl is first.
Oh, appointing for Brian.
Yep. So we have a motion by Dahl, second by Malkow to appoint Brian Heckendorf as chair. All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I'll abstain, I guess. All right, motion carries. Item number 4 is approval of the minutes for the Joint Review Board meeting of September 13th, 2022. Looking for a motion on that item.
So moved.
A second.
We have a motion by Rettler, second by Dahl. Any corrections, comments, concerns? All in favor by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5 on the agenda is approval of minutes for the Joint Review Board meeting of October 10th, 2023. Looking for a motion on that.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Dahl, second by Rettler. Any further discussion, comments, questions, concerns on that item? All in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6 is discuss responsibilities of the Joint Review Board. Anybody want to tackle that item?
I
Brian?
can do so.
All right.
I am Brian Raymer, Senior Municipal Advisor with Ellers. I also have with me Ariana Schmidt, Senior Financial Specialist with Ellers. For agenda item number 6, the responsibilities of the Joint Review Board. This was mentioned in the Joint Review Board letter we sent to you electronically via email, but just remember that at any point in time to kind of simplify what that letter described as your responsibilities is under statute. In a creation or amendment scenario, you are basically guiding the but-for test to kind of make those findings or find where that has not been met. In the case of the annual Joint Review Board meeting like we're doing here tonight, you are looking to review the status of each active tax increment district for the last fiscal year. So right now that would be 2023. And then part of that statutorily is the village filing the PE 300 and acknowledging that they did file that. So you'll see that later on your agenda. But in terms of reviewing the status and performance of the district, the village has engaged Ellers to provide a future cash flow for each district so that you can do a full diligent review of the expected performance of each district. So there's no statutory requirement to acknowledge that fact. That is an extra lever that the village is pulling to make sure that you are well informed in terms of how each district is performing to date and then on a projected basis as well. So note your only action would be acknowledging that the PE 300s were filed on time. So,
Thank you, sir. Item number 7 then, rolling into the review and of the annual PE 300 reports on the performance and status of, we'll go with 7A, tax increment district number 4. So Brian,
yep.
take it away.
Yep, I can handle that as well, President Heckendorf. So you should have in front of you, I believe on your devices, each annual report that was provided from Ellers contained within that packet is the PE 300s at the end, but we're going to go through some of the supplemental material provided within each, and I will start with district number 4. So if you go to the first page, this is a contextual part of the report that just describes what the purpose of the meeting is, which we walk through in agenda item number six, excuse me. So we'll skip to the district summary for number 4. District number 4 was created September 28th, 1995. The district type was not required at that point in time, so it technically does not have a district type. There's been a few amendments along the way in 2002, and then again in 2006. And then in 2009, the district did become a recipient district as part of an amendment from TID number 2, which is now closed. And then in 2018, part of TID 4 was overlaid with TID 6. So it's had a long life. It's had a lot of fun in terms of a lot of changes throughout the years, but we are coming up to the end of the district's life. As the third paragraph acknowledges within the district summary, the expenditure period ended in 2017, and it just has to pay off its remaining costs. The majority of those costs are liabilities held within another fund of the village, primarily the Capital Projects Fund. And the life was extended in 2022 in order to meet and pay off all of those liabilities. So we'll kind of walk through that numerically on a later page there. Right now, in terms of looking at the background data, its base value was about $645,000. So that is not dollars received or anything like that. That is the value of the district at the time it was created. Its current value on top of that base value, or what's called the incremental value, that has just recently been certified August 15th of 2024 for values 1/1/2024, is $59.7 million and change. So we've had a lot of growth within this district, which has helped to be able to pay off these expenditures that we'll discuss. The year-end fund balance for 2023 was negative $316,000. Again, part of that is the commingling of the cash available and then the liability outstanding, and its projected closure is 2025. The one note I'll make on that is the village did use the affordable housing extension in 2024, so that once all the project costs, are paid off in 24, they will use the last year's increment to transfer those funds to an affordable housing fund. Essentially, they already have the needs met for affordable housing within tax increment district number 7, so more or less that'll go into tax increment district number 7 in a second step, but it's all going to TID 7 in the end. So we'll kind of walk through that when we get to the numbers. So that said, we'll kind of start going to the next pages here, with the first page beyond the contextual report being the map. This was made in 1995, so just respect the mapping that was done at that time, but that is the area of tax increment district number 4. If nobody has any questions on the map, we can dive right in to the numbers. So with that, I'm now on page 4, which should be kind of a landscape page for you, which is labeled the tax increment projection worksheet. If you look at about halfway down and the columns which represent construction years and then valuation years, which derives the total increment. Within the boxed rows, these are the actual values that we do have. So within year 2023, there was value added of $329,000, which is how we now arrive at the total increment value of $59.7 million. If we apply that increment value moving left to right at the interim tax rate, or what we often refer to as the TID tax rate of last certified at $12.84 in 2024, which would be 23's tax year, that slight bump in value will allow about $766,000 to come in terms of revenue dollars for the district in the last 2 years there. But again, as mentioned, and as you'll see on the next page, we really only need 2025's revenue, and the village does not expect to use 2026 revenue. So, any questions on how the revenues are derived there? Okay. We'll move to the last numerical chart, which is page 5 of the document we provided for district number 4. If you'll see there, the bolded rows moving kind of top to bottom chronologically are the last year of audited financials or, fiscal year information that we have available. And then left to right goes revenues to expenditures, and then that remaining balances, whether it be cumulative fund balance and or cash. So here I'll just acknowledge for 2023, which is technically what we're here to kind of review. You can see there was total revenues of about $856,000. The district did start repaying that advance and transferred $854,000. Like I said, there's really no other project costs within this district, but for the ongoing administrative expenses to keep the district open, DOR fees, and third-party fees, auditing, having us prepare these materials, et cetera, of about $1,700 for the district, basically matching expenditures for 2023. So that's how we get to the cumulative balance of $316,213. One thing I'll acknowledge there is that is the difference between the cash the district has available and the advance outstanding. So as you'll see in kind of the yellow highlighted rows, that the remaining portion of that advance outstanding is going to be paid in 2024. We don't get to make those assessments whether or not the TID can afford it until we get some of these valuations to feel comforted on that. So it was determined last year, as I presented last year at this meeting for the 2022 fiscal year, that we would make that final repayment, and now that's kind of come true in 24 with the affordable housing extension. They now have the district open for 25, in which whatever increment is collected in 25 will then go to that affordable housing transfer, which is shown midway through the expenditure columns. So that'll be a 1-to-1, even if the TID tax rate changes. We've kind of seen that going down throughout the years. Should that go down slightly again, that'll be a 1-to-1 dollar change. And so the remaining cumulative fund balance shown there is after that transfer will be made. There will be a final audit expense that we estimate will be $15,000 in order to complete that effort. So we wanted to include that as well, but you should have about $460,000 just under of remaining cumulative fund balance that would be distributed to the tax entities upon closeout and that final audit being complete. So any questions on tax increment district number 4? The last 3 pages, again, I'll repeat this each time, but technically that's what you're here to make sure happened. That was what was filed with the Department of Revenue. Those numbers that are represented there were presented on the prior page, so not going to go through the PE 300. The one element you may note, super exciting for DOR reporting for the first time ever, is there's a new section of that report. Drum roll, please. But that is for the net new construction part of prior acts that were passed in the legislature to provide additional detail for the districts. One element there is all it does is essentially isolate what is the net new construction in each district, and then if we apply that to the presumed levy from the prior year, basically saying how much of the village's levy is attributable to TID in net new construction, if you will. So that is kind of what you're seeing. It is lagging by a year too. So remember that as part of this. So this is actually, I believe, kind of a representation of 2022, if I have that correct. But they also don't do a very good job of representing that here. But so that's what you'll kind of continue to see throughout each of these reports. The one other element that might be confusing is this section is the same for each district. Why, I don't know, but just note you're not going to find any new information looking at this versus the PE 300 for TID 5, 6, or 7, if that makes sense. So it's automatically filled out by the Department of Revenue and just simply segregating that new construction there. So. Questions on anything TID 4 related? Okay, I'll move to TID 5. Looking at opening that report this is an industrial district created in 2014, and I'm in the district summary section. The expenditure period therefore would be 2029, as it has to be 5 years before its mandatory termination is currently constructed of 2034. So it's got a 20-year life. Expenditure period is always 5 years before its maximum life. The background data there, base value is about $1 million. It's generated to date about $7.1 million. So again, that was just recently certified August 15th, a couple weeks ago. The year-end fund balance for TID 5 was $13,267. The projected closure is 2035. The one thing that I'll just acknowledge here is this TID is basically formulated financially on a pay-go structure, meaning the majority of the increment produced is then paid back to the developer under the developer agreement. So it is kind of structured to be open throughout the majority of its life. So you may note, I thought you said the termination date was May 20th of 34, and you show the closure as 35, even though the termination date is in 1 year. Since it surpasses August 15th, technically there's a revenue year in the following tax year. So just understand that all of this is kind of lagging based off of valuation and tax years there. So it'll close revenue year 35, but the village board would be required to adopt a termination resolution by May 20th of 2034. So hopefully that makes sense. Speaking to this every day, it makes sense to me, but if you have questions on it, please let us know. I'll jump to some of the supplemental attachments then. You'll see
Just a
the map.
question on the
Oh,
notes.
sorry, go ahead.
So development agreement between the village, Cary Industries, Washington County, and the Washington County Economic Development Corp. Are you guys talking about Christian Cheslak's group? Is
Yeah.
that the name of his group? Because it was
It's
EDWC.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I just was, when I saw that, I'm like, it's a question.
Yeah, typically we follow the language that we have of the current development agreement, so unless that's been acknowledged in an amended agreement, we generally don't change it, but yeah, if he's changed corp, how that's structured, we can certainly make that adjustment. So then, the first attachment that we have would be the map. So if you have any questions on that, but more of a island TID and just being the two original parcels there, suitable to this industrial development. So then on the following page, which is page 4, again, this is the tax increment projection worksheet previously describing TID 4. I'm not going to re-describe how this is constructed, but if you just want to focus your eyes on the boxed years here on page 4, the value added was $229,700, meaning that's how we got up to the 7.1 million of increment value or value added since creation. that 7.1 applied to the interim tax rate would generate about $91,000 per year. So again, we've kind of frozen the values. The one thing I will acknowledge, if you were to look back in history above the boxed value in tax increment on the most right-hand side, you'll note that tax rate is dropping faster than the economic appreciation, which is typical of all districts these days, as the reason for the tax rate dropping is primarily due to the equalized value of residential properties in the housing market valuation boom, and communities, the other taxing jurisdictions, not directly being able to levy attached to equalized value. It's more off of net new construction. You can't increase the levies to meet that tax rate in time, so your appropriated interim tax rate then drops as the equalized values rise faster like they are. So the one thing I will acknowledge is, there's potentially kind of a rebalancing or the truth that these numbers kind of continue to go down, given the village just did a revaluation and wanting to see how that may affect the TID tax rate going into 25. We decided not to change that, so we just kind of kept it flat. Again, it's going to be cash in, cash out on a percentage basis. So at the end of the day, it'll just mean less dollars out the door as well for TID 5. But it's an important thing that we can maybe have another data point after the budgets are passed for every taxing jurisdiction and revisit next year to kind of see, did we level that off as a part of the revaluation process, or are we going to expect this to go down and we can build future projections in a different manner going forward then. So the next page then takes those tax increment revenues and projects the revenues and expenditures for the district. Essentially, first 70% goes to carry. The remainder of what's left over of that, 30%, 80% goes to the WC, EDC, or whatever it's been changed to now. And then there are the administrative fees. So the 150 that you're seeing in the third column for expenditures are actually the DOR fees to keep a district open. Professional services are as described for TID 4, same kind of elements there to get to our total expenditures. Basically, the district is going to kind of about break even, do a little bit better than break even each year, and then at the end of this, pay off whatever it can according to the development agreements. So I think kind of more to come as those values come in, the appreciation within the district and the interim tax rates change at the point at which, in my mind, seeing how this could go in the future is there's probably an element of revisiting these original agreements closer to the termination and seeing where the numbers are at then to determine, would the village need to prepay these or extend the district in order to pay it out, right? We wouldn't want another fund of the government to be forced to pay it, so likely that would mean a potential extension if it would be necessary to pay the full amount. So it's a 2030 problem, if you will, to revisit that. But at the end of the day, it's not going to cause a negative balance within the district in the interim or on that road to that path, if that makes sense. So if there's no questions, then again, the final couple of pages is the PE 300 report for TID number 5. Hearing no questions, I'll jump to TID number 6 and jump to that first page. TID 6 was created in 2017 as an industrial district. It has an expenditure period, therefore, that ends in 2033 and a mandatory termination date of 2038. The background data there is the base value was about $500,000, just under at 474,900. The value generated to date was 23.9 million, just recertified as of 8/15 of this year. And the year-end fund balance, I don't know if that's not correct. It is, what I'm taking there is actually a cash difference between draft financial that we have and the fund balance reported in that draft financial. So there's going to be some accounting changes that would true up that amount. It's about at a zero balance, maybe a little negative balance there. So there was an accounting discussion had this morning at 8 a.m. With the auditor. So I'll just say we're basically at about a zero fund balance in truth there. So I apologize. I didn't change that or make a special note in this report. So it's only verbal here tonight. This projected closure is 2039. This report, or this district, excuse me, is tied similarly to a development agreement, kind of a cash in, cash out. I'll kind of describe more of that as we go on into the cash flow, because it'll probably make more sense once we get there. So with that, I'll jump to the attachments, and the first one being the map again. And so this is several parcels up Highway P to Northwest Passage. And you can kind of see the blue is the border of the district there. Beyond that, to look at some of kind of the valuations, I did want to dive a little deeper for TID 6 than just show the values in to date. And there are some parcels that have some ongoing improvements on them that would be added to this. So the actual, one thing of note is you'll see a negative there for the 1124, excuse me, 1124 valuation. So it wasn't that there was deconstruction in 23 that caused that. That's actually part of the revaluation process, and basically acknowledging the fact that the assessments to fair market values did not jump up like they have for residential properties. Manufacturing and commercial are about even, if not going down. So we actually have some depreciation, if you will, in value as a result for the 2023. As I did say, there are ongoing continued developments for the final 3 parcels here. So 2 of them we've been supplied by the developer, should value at about 12 million. I believe the last one as of this morning was about 2 million. I just had it yellow because didn't have that information at the time. But there's additional value to be added there in terms of new construction within the district for the next couple of years. So then to turn that to the increment projection on the next page, one element here that you'll see is the values added just described on the prior page are in the first column. Then that turns into the valuation year, and in the boxed row, you'll see that's how we went from 25.6 million to 23.9 million with that depreciation, and then adding the 12 million and potentially more per construction. And then we do have an appreciation factor applied. So after the reval, right, presumably those will start to separate again, and the assessments will remain the same, and the equalized values will change. Historically, that's been at about a 4% clip, so we put in 2.75%, so that's where you're seeing an inflation increment there. So that's what we're applying 2.57% to the total value applied in the prior year and adding that on. Applying the 24 valuation or the 23.9 million to the last year's TID tax rate of $12.84, we have about 307,000 in terms of TID increment that's being generated there. And then with the new values, that could jump up to 400,000 some. So we'll have more information as those final parcels are developed and valued to, isolate what the total value of the district will be at that point. So that would likely come in the next two years of reports to be presented. So then on the next page, which is a larger document, left to right, but that is taking those projected revenues and then applying them against current and oncoming expenditures. So there's debt service payments from 2019, two series of bonds and notes in 2019, and then 2023 bonds. And then beyond that, the developer agreement currently has overperformance payments as a result of that is based off of a percentage of assessed value over the original developer guarantee. So that's been at a clip of either 20 or 15%. What's been acknowledged is due to the devaluation as well as the TID tax rate dropping, that math no longer works. So one thing that is represented here in the yellow columns under the expenditures is we are working with the developer to reconfigure that formula to something that matches cash inflows instead of assessment and a percentage of assessment. So those are ongoing discussions, and any point in time that a developer agreement is executed, whether amending an existing or a whole new agreement, just note by statute, the village has to send that to you as joint review board members. So you'll be knowledgeable of that agreement once it's agreed upon. Discussions to reconfigure that math are ongoing. Right now, we just kind of had all data points to date, and so we're doing a percentage of increment left over after the debt service payments, right? We can't change the debt service payments, so those should be acknowledged as cash out the door before we give back an overperformance payment. That is how the original agreement is structured for the 2019 bonds. So we want to make sure that that's acknowledged within the new agreement there. So you'll kind of see it's going to be a lot like TID 5, where it's kind of a break even on an annual basis, more or less, and then applying that over time. So at the original onset of this agreement, when the TID tax rate was much higher, it was presumed that those payments could be made. But again, the math is no longer. So this kind of runs its course throughout the full life of its district, and that's why you see it going out through 39. But again, it's all to ensure that we don't dive into a negative cumulative balance, have another fund of the government, of the village, provide cash, and then we have a liability like 4 kind of accumulating on itself, or to force the village to go into additional debt to make these payments. So we're hoping that these discussions continue with the developer to reach a compromise that makes sense for all parties. So final part there is the P 300 for district number 6. Any questions on 6? Okay. Then I'll move into 7. Flipping to the first page there, TID 7 is a mixed-use district that was created in 2019. The project plan was amended in 2022, and as part of a boundary amendment. The expenditure period is 2034, and the termination date is 2039, or 20 years after the creation date. looking at the background data, the base value is 8.84 million, which I believe actually does acknowledge a base value redetermination, which I'll explain further on a later page. But the base value was changed as a result of Act 12. The increment value is 2.5 million, as recently certified August 15th for 1/1/24 valuation. The year-end fund balance was about negative $500,000. Again, kind of the startup costs, as the district is still relatively young, still climbing out of those startup costs. The projected closure based off of the current cash flow is 2036. Now, this one being a little newer, I would just acknowledge, right, we're going to have more and more data points in the next couple of years that build off of each other. And so that is probably subject to change and relatively rapid changes as valuations come in. The other acknowledgement is there's a lot of growth going back there if you want to go outside and take a look. So that said, there's, this one will be more of a movable object as we continue in the next couple of years, but we'll give you, in terms of today's information available at our fingertips, what it looks like and how we got to 2036. So then I'll jump into the attachments. The first attachment being the map. So that's right behind the municipal center and kind of going across the street as well from the municipal center, and includes the lots in which we can see construction going on over out this window here as well, and then goes across Main Street. So if there's no questions on the map, I'll kind of get to the numbers. This as well, knowing that there's, it's a youthful district, we have a lot of developments forthcoming. We wanted to provide the development assumptions as well, so you get a sense of kind of the additional builds potentially coming. So we have the actuals represented on the left-hand side, and then the potential additional develops on the columns to the right of the actuals. So a significant amount of development forthcoming for the undeveloped lots to date, and certainly a lot of movement within this district, with, I think, kind of the, most movable objects probably being the outlots against the first three columns there, but those are proceeding and moving forward. And then the commercial, if you're interested, the first commercial estimate is provided from that construction going on that you can see out the window. The remaining commercial are estimates at this time for what would be across the street, unless I'm misspeaking. Yeah, yeah. So with that, those development assumptions produce the estimated value added for the tax increment projection, which is on page 5. There in the boxed element, you can see the base value redetermination. So Act 12 kind of got rid of personal property, and therefore, in order to recapture that within a district, you need to redetermine the base value, which essentially lowers the base value but increases the increment, but it essentially equalizes you back to where you were. Otherwise, you kind of lose that increment if the base value change would have remained the same. So there, I did want to segregate what that difference was, just so it wasn't lost in translation, if you will. So we did go from just north of 1 million last year to 2.5 million there, as you'll see in the boxed row. Applying that to the $12.84, that would be estimated to produce about 32,000, almost 33,000 a year. The additional development ongoing will continue to increase the projected tax increment revenue there. At this time, kind of we're keeping everything flat, and we'll kind of revisit this. Suffice to say that the development will help kind of offset any of those prior changes that we've talked about in terms of the equalization process and and the difference in the TID tax rate versus economic appreciation rate. Additional build will help negate some of that, and it'll also help that part of that is residential as well. So then taking that expected revenues to the cash flow, here, all I would say is we have one series of bonds outstanding from 2019 as existing debt. We are showing proposed issuance in 2025 for potential future projects that are in the project plan, just not yet executed. So that might be an update for next year if that is executed in the timeline as depicted. There are additional capital expenditures shown in the streetlights final pavement column within the expenditures. And then the commercial incentive that you're seeing there is from the development that is going on for the credit union and the developer agreement that was executed in 23, I believe. So that 108,000 is directly as part of a developer agreement and being paid out over time. So as you can see here, projected inflow versus cash outflow, we're showing that this district should close in 2036, and it would be able to prepay the existing and proposed debt obligations as shown. So that P300 then is the last couple pages of that report, and if there's no questions on TID number 7, you are welcome to move to agenda item number 8.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions on any of the stuff that was just going over? All right. Item number 8 on the agenda is Resolution 24-20, resolution acknowledging filing of annual reports and compliance with annual meeting requirement. Looking for a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Rettler, second by Malkow. Any further discussion? All in favor by saying aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 9, citizens or village staff to address the joint review board. Seeing no one, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion by Heckendorf, second by Malkow to adjourn. All in favor by saying aye? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for coming, everyone.